Sister-in-law encouraging her friend to get with my husband. My sister-in-law, 23F, is my husband's, 28M, half-sister and was the result of their mother's infidelity. When he was 12, his dad divorced their mom after a paternity test revealed she was not his biological child. My father-in-law refused to have anything to do with my sister-in-law while maintaining a relationship with my husband. As a result, my sister-in-law is extremely attached to my husband. He is also very protective of his sister and will not tolerate anything negative being said about her, so I'm posting this here before mentioning it to him. My husband and I purchased a house last year that includes its own indoor swimming pool. My sister-in-law was excited when she saw it and asked if she could use it sometimes with her friend. We said it was fine as long as she gave us notice before showing up. She and her friend, Ella, have used it multiple times but rarely when my husband is home. With the lockdown, my husband has started working from home. My sister-in-law asked if she and Ella could come over and use the pool. I told her no because I'm pregnant and don't want to accidentally expose the baby to anything dangerous. My sister-in-law then asked if they could come over if they quarantined for 2 weeks, to which my husband said it was fine. 2 weeks later, they came to my house. My husband was in his office, so after some small talk, they went straight to the pool. After an hour, my husband came out, and we hung out in the kitchen. My sister-in-law walked in to get a drink and started talking to my husband. Before returning to the pool, she said, "Ella's going to be so happy to see you." It was strange, because my husband and Ella are not close. Ella entered the kitchen 2 minutes later and spent the rest of her time talking with my husband until he excused himself to get back to work. When she talked to him, she was extremely happy and smiling. He'd say something sarcastic, and she'd laugh as if it were the funniest joke she had ever heard. It seemed like she was flirting with him. Before she returned to the pool, she gave me a strange smirk. Before they left, they asked my husband if he worked from home every day of the week, and he confirmed it. Every day for the next 2 weeks, they came over to the house to swim. Except that Ella never entered the water. Instead, she spent every day at home in her bikini. She used to wear a one-piece, if that helps. When my husband came out to hang out with me, she quickly interrupted him and kept him talking until he had to return to work. I prepared lunch for everyone, and when I excused myself to call my husband, my sister-in-law interrupted me and said Ella could do it for me. They made eye contact, and Ella seemed happy as she went to get him. Ella has also become more touchy with my husband. She places her hands on his chest and arms and stands or sits very close to him. To my husband's credit, he usually makes space between them when she does something like this. I believe my sister-in-law is involved because she has recently made several pregnancy-related jabs at me. She told me a story about one of her friend's boyfriends cheating on her, followed by something like, "Did you know that a lot of men start cheating when their wives are pregnant?" She's also commented on how I look chubby now, which looks strange next to my husband because he's well built. If she notices my husband leaving the office, she immediately goes to inform Ella. I know pregnancy hormones can mess with a person's brain, so I'm wondering if I'm simply looking for something that doesn't exist. My sister-in-law texted me yesterday asking if they could come over to swim next week, and I really want to say no, but I know she'll complain to my husband if I do. I'd like to talk to him first, but I'm not sure if I should bring up the flirting. Am I being delusional? Update. So, I read and reread all of the comments on the original post to figure out how I was going to address the issue. It turns out, I didn't have to. We were watching a movie when my phone lit up with another text from my sister-in-law informing me that she would be here at 1 p.m. the next day to swim with Ella. My husband noticed it and told me to tell her not to come. This is very strange behavior for my husband because he usually does anything to accommodate my sister-in-law and rarely refuses her anything. I asked if anything had happened, and he shrugged it off as we continued watching the movie. A couple of minutes later, he paused the movie to ask me a question. He asked if I had noticed Ella never swam when she visited our house. I wish I could say I was calm and collected as the comments suggested, but I ended up laughing hysterically. I was honestly relieved he brought it up rather than me having to do it. I think my husband thought I was crazy. When I finally stopped laughing, he repeated the question and stated that he wanted a serious response. I stated, "Of course, I've noticed," and he replied awkwardly, "So, you must have noticed the other thing too." To summarize the conversation that followed, my husband hadn't noticed Ella flirting with him for the first few days because he was so busy with work that he didn't pay attention to anything else. He stated that when she became more handsy, he had a light bulb moment and realized she was interested in him. He says he didn't want to stress me out, so he didn't say anything, but he was concerned I'd noticed and assumed he was interested because he hadn't immediately shut it down. He knew we'd have to talk about it eventually, but he wasn't sure how to start. Oh, the irony. He did speak privately with Ella, telling her that he was happily married and had no desire to start a relationship with anyone else. She must not have taken him seriously because she continued to do it. Finally, on Sunday, he called his sister to tell her that unless she got Ella to stop, she was no longer welcome at our house. His sister threw a tantrum and said some nasty things about me, the baby, and our relationship. She insisted I was somehow involved in his request and made some remarks about how I was controlling and insecure because I resembled a beached whale and Ella was younger and more attractive. He was furious and threatened to stop talking to her if she ever said anything like that about me again. She claimed I had baby-trapped him, and when my husband pointed out that we were already married and he wanted to start a family, she insisted I had manipulated him into feeling that way. She said that he was unhappy in our marriage and always appeared tired because I forced him to work to fund my luxury lifestyle while I sat on my butt all day. He explained that he chose to be a lawyer knowing he would have to work long hours, and that I had only recently left my job, so her accusations were unfounded. She said some other things along the same lines, but what finally made my husband snap was when she said the baby was already ruining everything and would only get worse when it was born, and he should have dragged me to the abortion clinic while he still had the chance. He told her that she and Ella were no longer welcome in our home until they apologized for how they had been behaving and what my sister-in-law had said. He said he wasn't sure he could ever forgive or forget what she'd said about our baby, even if she apologized, and he couldn't believe she'd even consider, let alone say, something like that. She apparently began crying and apologizing, saying she didn't mean it, that she was afraid of losing him, and that she wasn't thinking clearly. He hung up on her. He showed me his phone, and she has been calling and texting him ever since, begging him to respond. He asked if she had said anything to me. I debated whether or not to say anything, but he insisted that he knew she had said something and wanted to know what. I told him what I mentioned in the original post, as well as some other things she said. He asked why I didn't mention it when she first said it. I mentioned how he became defensive whenever I mentioned anything critical about his sister. I pointed out that he was doing it again, and after some back and forth, he did admit that maybe he was a little bit defensive when it came to her, but he promised to stop and wanted to make sure we could talk about everything, including his sister. He ended up saying he wanted to try couples counseling. He stated it wasn't because he thought there was something wrong with our relationship, but he has been speaking with his father a lot lately, and he mentioned that one thing he regretted about his marriage with my husband's mother was that they never went to therapy until the cracks in their marriage became too large. They go in his current marriage, which has helped him avoid the mistakes he made in his first. I agreed, and we'll probably try it soon. My husband believes my sister-in-law will eventually show up, even if we tell her not to, but he has promised to deal with her if she does. So, Reddit, I guess you were correct. I really just needed to speak with him. Thank you for your advice and comments, I enjoyed reading them all.